This is how we manage teams remotely. In 2021, I set out to build a software development company. And I had the choice between, on the one hand, to found an office and a local company and put developers into that office, or do everything remotely. I decided the remote route because I believe we could attract better talent and be more flexible and agile with staffing. In order to do that, we had to learn how to manage people remotely, and after 3 years, we found a blueprint that works really well for us. Clear communication guidelines for us, that means we have a structure that we follow every week. We have these one-on-ones with direct reports, and in the teams they also do that. We do every Friday as a demo day. So for the software products that we put out, we have a demo on every Friday where we show the whole team what we have been working on. And then we also have daily check-ins and checkouts. And these daily check-ins, we do them in our MetaMost, which is like Slack. And we don't do them in a stand-up because we are very asynchronous and it makes more sense for us just to do it in writing. Works really well. I learned a lot about communication from this one post, the GitHub's README project, where you basically have to decide how do you want to communicate. And so we have different factors of communication. Do you want to have a synchronous and asynchronous? Synchronous is when we just connect on calls, which happens quite a bit, especially for Brainstorm and for the content we put on YouTube. And then all these other things as well, one-to-one, one-to-many. This is something that people often do wrong when they invite too many people in meetings. So we try to do more one-on-ones, and if necessary, we record it, we hand it over to someone else. And just in few cases, we do one-to-many because I think we just save more time here. And then also search capabilities. Do you actually need to get something that is communicated? Need to search for something later on. So Slack has this free plan where the history vanishes at one point, which is their upsell for the pro version. We found we often don't need much of that. We put a lot of stuff actually into the code, into markdown files in code. This helps. This works really well for us, but every company is different. What we use as tools, we use MetaMost, which is like an internal company chat. I can show you my screenshot here real quick. For example, MetaMost here looks like that. I don't want to show you my whole user list right now, but this is just what I discussed with my content guy, just for the today's content. And we do Google Meet for calls. There is a really good app, which I can show you here. This is how it looks like. So it's like an app that you can use and it stays on top of your desktop. So you don't need to always use the browser, which is really nice. And then we use Cliptil, which is a tool we developed ourselves for internal video recording. If you want to have a version, you can email me. I can get you a version here as well. Okay. The next thing is trust and accountability. And I have a strong opinion on this, especially with check-ins. And there is a book called The High Output Management. It's a very old book written by Andy Grove from Intel. It's very high level, but it's definitely helpful, especially if you haven't managed much. It definitely opened my eyes because I'm not a manager by trade. I'm a software developer. What they basically said is if you delegate a task, the check-in for that delegation is part of the delegation. So if you don't check in on the work, it's not really delegated. So what we try to do in the management side is we try to check in on the work that we delegated. We use a tool for this called Tiger. Tiger is really nice. I don't know why it's free, but apparently it is. It's a full Scrum suite, and you can even use Kanban, and you can use it as an issue tracker. It's amazing. And then we use GitLab for the code collaboration for our repositories. And we use GitLab extensively because the history is kept. You can see what you worked on even in the next 10 years. It's going to be written into the Git history. And we even use this for this blog. So this blog, as you see here, this is just my personal website. I can show you. This is just also a website that's in Git. It's just a browser here. And this would help us to really make sure we can collaborate on things together and we don't override each other's changes. Yeah, Google Docs would also work, and we use Google Docs for a couple of things. But if it's just code or the blog or the content, most of that is actually in Git. One more tip for Git, and I made another video on this. What we try to do is show the other team members what we work on. So we do the daily checkout. We tell them what we worked on in our chat. And we also, in the code, we also write checklists into the code. And there's this algorithm which I referenced now a couple of times already. So what we do when we plan a feature, we are writing a merge request or pull request on GitHub. So on GitLab, we write a merge request and we state what we want to do in the task, and we use this algorithm for that. make an outline of the project. For each item of the outline, make the outline. And then you basically have a tree of stuff, and then you just tick things off. And as that is in our GitLab repositories in there, we basically track how far a task is according to completion. And this really works really well. And something I always urge all the teams is to push often. So git push into the repository so that their latest status is always be seen by others. So you would see what someone has worked on, but just by looking at the list of merge requests. For us, the social interactions are maybe a bit more simple. So we don't do big team retreats, or we don't do many calls of like hangout calls or coffee calls. We try to keep it practical. It's important for us that people always communicate if they get stuck so that they can help each other. It's super important, and this happens regularly in the teams. We don't do these hangouts so much, but we want to try this. We did a couple of them, people like them. So we have a plan for this weekend, for this Friday, to play some Quake together. There's actually an online version of Quake now, which we're going to try. So I'm curious about this as well. But usually it hasn't been necessary much for our needs. The next thing I want to talk about is employee well-being. And yes, maybe I have a controversial opinion on this. There are a lot of things, like the common advice is this, or even more than that. I have the opinion that people can usually take care of these things themselves if they get something interesting, something exciting to work on. The mission to work on something is way more important than anything else. And I've seen this many times when developers talk with me. They tell me they want to learn from me. They want to work on something interesting. And what I think people sometimes forget is they need a real chance of success. So what can they do in order to really complete a project, to bring it online, to bring it up to the users? These three things to me are the most important, and no corporate wellness program beats those. And a story from my old job many years ago, I was at a large social network company, and they had a lot of well-being meetings where I could go there freely, and I attended a lot of them, and it was great. It felt amazing, but I didn't make much progress. And honestly, I felt way better when I sat alone on the Philippines coding or starting to code Ruby on Rails and really learning the ropes and coding for probably 10 hours per day. I felt well more fulfilled than in any kind of corporate well-being program. Maybe that's just me, but the developers working for us, they feel the same. One more thing about communication, which includes onboarding. When someone comes to the company, they need to get onboarded. It's super important, otherwise they feel lost and they get left behind. These are just some things that are obvious. You always have a documentation that shows the developer how to start with something. Also, what really helps is having some kind of standard or part of some standard-ish of a tech stack. So we try to always work with the same software packages. So it's easier to grasp, it's easier to start with them. And then when people get onboarded, we usually have a buddy system, so they get assigned someone that would help them get onboarded. And of course, the team mission is always getting communicated. It's super important that they actually know why we're doing something. And of course, the team lead. So in the teams, we usually have one team lead who's responsible for a bit of management, but also the major technical decisions in the team. They usually have to onboard people and check in more people. So they have to just ask them more often. Hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Do you need help? And then also help them with some pair programming. This has proven to be very beneficial, especially in the beginning, because sometimes people are coding in a different way, or let's say in a slow way, and they don't even know it's slow until they've seen someone who's way faster than them. And then again, to the check-ins being done by the team leads, what I notice is that entrepreneurs we can kick our own ass. Others need help. So when there's something, let's say a feature, we want to get a feature done. I think I have it in this slide. So if there's a feature, we want to get it done, and a feature would take around a week, we give a week deadline, and then we check in on them, and we make sure that they actually can live up to that standard. And if they're slower, then we need to talk about the requirements, or maybe they haven't understood something correctly. There's another video I made on deadlines, which you can check out here on my YouTube channel. And now I'd like to know, what environment have you worked in and why has that worked for you? Leave a comment below.